What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Rob's house. Today we're doing another mod to my Viper. Today we're going to be installing an MGW short throw shifter onto the Viper. If MGW sounds familiar to you, that is because we installed one of their shifters on the Corvette, and I absolutely love that shifter. On the Corvette, the factory shifter is just very spongy feeling. Kind of hard to tell what gear you're going into sometimes. On the factory one, I would hit 7th gear on accident sometimes. It was a little too easy to get past the solenoid. And then installing the MGW shifter, the throw is shorter, obviously, but it's also much more like notchy and mechanical feeling. Now on the Viper, that's not so much of an issue because the factory shifter on the Viper is already very mechanical. You feel very connected to the car. It doesn't feel spongy at all. I will confess, I do miss gears sometimes because I feel like the whole shifter on the Viper is angled a little bit to the left. So like sometimes it's, if I'm going to third, I'll accidentally, like if I'm going from second to third, sometimes I'll accidentally hit 5th. And then sometimes if I'm going from 3rd to 4th, I have accidentally hit 2nd before. It's still pretty rare when that happens. I mean, for the most part, the factory shifter is pretty good on this car. I don't know, it would be nice if the throw was a little bit shorter. The throw is pretty long. Here, I'll give you a really quick demo of what the stock throw is like. So I have the car parked in 1st gear. As you can see, it's pretty notchy. Actually, another thing is it needs to be lubricated. I don't know if you can see there, but it's actually stuck right there. It's not recentering itself. The throw is kind of long, right? If I go into 1st and then I go to 2nd, right? That's a pretty big shift. I don't know how well that comes through on camera. That's 3 to 4, so that's 3rd. See what I mean by 3rd still being like a little over? That is 3rd gear. Right, so this is 1st gear, and then that's 3rd. So it's still like to the left a little bit. If you look at it from here, right, like everything's kind of angled toward you, which I guess is, I'm just not used to that because the Corvette's not like that. If I go into 5th, it's like straight up, basically. If I go into 6th, it's kind of almost like straight back. But anyway, I am going to retain this factory shift knob because it has the factory Mamba red and like polished aluminum look that kind of matches all of the other stuff that I have going on here. In the end, it's actually going to look the same. With the stock Viper shift linkage, because it's already pretty mechanical feeling, a lot of people like it. Some people just buy either like an aftermarket knob and shaft kit, or even just an aftermarket shaft, just so that it doesn't sit up as high. But that doesn't actually change your throw, right? That just makes the knob sit lower. But the shifter still has to travel the same amount of distance underneath where the shaft actually connects to the shift linkage to change gears. So I'm the opposite. I actually don't care how high the knob sits. I think it's actually fine where it is. I think it's comfortable. So I'm not really worried about the height. I just would like just a shorter throw. So let's take a look at what we're actually working with. All right, so this is our MGW shifter. As you can see, it's pretty much just a direct bolt-on replacement. There's 4 bolts. This little ball goes actually like into a receiver. It kind of just, actually I have it upside down. It kind of just plops into place, and then your shifter sticks out over here. So it is a little bit to the right of where the shifter shaft is on the car. It came with this cool ACR knob from the guy that I bought it from, but I don't think I'm going to use it for 2 reasons. 1, it's got a big scuff on it right here. And 2, this red doesn't, this is like a dark red and it doesn't match. I don't know how well it'll come through on camera. I don't know how well that's coming through on camera, because I think on camera it actually looks lighter than it is. But this is a lot darker than this red. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to keep my factory knob. And also my factory knob is a little bit bigger because it has that leather wrap around it. It feels like fatter in your hand. And I kind of have big hands, so I like that actually. This ball is a little bit smaller. Anyway, let me throw the helmet cam on so you can get like kind of a first person view of what I'm doing, and I'll walk you through the installation procedure. I'll be right back. All right, guys, so let's get started here. The first thing that we got to do is, in order to get the factory, we got to get this whole shifter boot off, but in order to do that, we got to actually remove the shaft and the knob of the shifter. So in order to do that, we're going to remove the boot. We're going to pull up on it. That will expose the locking nut, and we can actually remove the shaft. So we're going to use a 3/16 Allen bit. A lot of stuff on the Viper, because it's an American car, or maybe more accurately because it's a Chrysler product. They use American gauge for a lot of stuff. Corvettes and Mustangs are not like that. I'll tell you from owning all of them that the Corvette and Mustang use a lot of metric stuff. These don't look like I'm loosening them, but I am. Some of them are like popping up, some of them don't look like they are, but they are. They should all be. Things are like kind of annoying to remove actually. Because as you try to pull them out, they kind of get wet. The other ones get wedged in place, kind of, sort of. That was one that was stuck. All right. This ring comes. That will allow me to expose here. You kind of can see it, kind of can't. But there is a locking nut attached to the shaft, so I'm just going to grab some wrenches. This should be like that. All right. Sorry, that looked kind of violent, but that's just because, I mean, it's a locking nut, right? So it's gonna lock in place pretty good. Screw this guy off. Put it in neutral. Screw this guy off, now the boot will come right out. There's our boot. It's out of the way. Here's our factory shift knob. All right, guys, minor snag. So unfortunately, I don't have the right, this is an SAE size ratchet that I need, and I don't have one. Or I at least don't have like a regular open wrench type that'll fit. I only have metric ones. So I'm gonna have to go to Harbor Freight tomorrow, just get a SAE set here so that I can pull this shaft off and replace it with the factory one. That's kind of a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. I can still finish the rest of the install tonight. So like at the very end, I'll probably just leave the shift boot off tonight. And then, you know, I'll come back tomorrow and just swap the top end of the shifter out for my factory one. And then, you know, put the boot back on. But anyway, we can still do the rest of the install tonight. It's not a big deal. There's a few things we got to do here. It just has 2 buttons here, and the screen section of this thing actually comes off, which is kind of nice, just to get that out of our way. So we are going to have to take off basically this whole covering piece. We do have to take all this red stuff off, so we're gonna have to take the center console out. In order to do that, I think we have to lift up on this a little bit. There's some screws behind the seats and stuff. So anyway, let's get a trim removal tool and get this guy off. Start prying up on this. It should come right out. The shifter boot supposedly can wiggle that. Okay, now I do have to remove the window switches. That's what I'm getting stuck on here. All right. There are 2 window switches. They're really easy. They just have little push tabs. Remove that, and then pull off the accessory power for the cigarette lighter here and set that aside. We got to remove the center console now, so that doesn't look too hard. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips head screws. It says to not remove the Torx screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there are 2 more, supposedly, on the seats. Yeah, so there's one right there, and there's one on the other side too. So means you can't screw them up. You got 4 of one kind and 2 of the other. I will note that the 2 that I took from the back of the seats are the longer ones. All right, so now we should be able to pull the console out. Just kind of tucked in there. And then it comes up. Now, we do have to disconnect the power wire here. All right, so yeah, you just got to unplug this guy and you're good. That's the center console. Now we can actually remove the factory shifter. So now we got a bunch of rivets. If you never drilled out rivets before, it's pretty easy. A lot of people are scared of them, but honestly, it's not bad. The side skirts of the Corvette are actually attached via rivets almost entirely. They have 1 7mm bolt toward the front, and that's it. And the rest are rivets. There's a bunch of them under there. And the way you drill a rivet out, first you grab a drill with a step bit. To drill a rivet out, all you're gonna do is you wanna drill it until this head, like the head comes off. When you're dealing with like aero, like on the splitter, you actually push the rest of the rivet through. So I'm not sure what it looks like under here, but we should be able to do that, so. All right, guys, we're back. It's the next day. I went to Harbor Freight, got some SAE long wrenches so that I can take apart that shifter assembly so that I can put my factory knob on. I also managed to get this shift boot off. It's right here. Now, this thing was a gigantic pain. As you can see, I actually kind of messed up 2 of the holes, but unfortunately this thing was held on by steel rivets. I really don't get why you would use steel rivets for this, like why aluminum wouldn't suffice, or why you'd use rivets at all, frankly. Like in the Corvette, the boot in the Corvette, if I remember correctly, I'd have to go back and look at the video, but I believe it was held on just by like bolts. So like, I don't know why Chrysler chose not to do that, because these things were really difficult to drill out. I used like a few different drill bits, a few different step bits. I broke several of my drill bits, which are all titanium, by the way. So I don't know. All I'm saying is prepare yourself for a headache on this one. This is supposed to be an easy mod, but evidently in this car, it is not that easy of a mod. The Corvette, I had done start to finish, like disassembly, you know, removal of the shifter, installation of the shifter, and reassembly of the entire interior and center console in like 2 hours. So I'm already probably like 3 or 4 hours into this job. The rivets alone took me about 2 hours to get out. Really difficult. Now, if you can see inside of here, let me put my light on. You can kind of see bolt, right? But then there's like 2 more kind of back there. There's also not really a good way to get to those, unfortunately. I think the only way, unfortunately, that I can do anything about it is to do what a lot of the instructions say to do, which is they give you the dimensions to drill additional holes, which is okay, I guess, except that the whole point of this boot is to basically act as a heat shield, because the transmission is literally right there. So without that, you got a bunch of engine heat and a bunch of transmission heat coming right up through into the cabin. And then I have some, it's like a cuttable sheet of rubber. I think I'm gonna use this as my insulator. Let me see if I can find it. So this is like some 3M, it just comes in a sheet, and it's just like cuttable rubber with 3M adhesive on the back. So I think I'm just gonna cut like a strip of this, or like 2 little patches to plug up those holes that I'm gonna have to drill. There's really, I just don't see another way to go about doing this. Frankly. So a little bit less than ideal, but we're in the home stretch now, I think. I'm gonna drill those holes, see if I can get to the shifter bolts, and then I think we'll be pretty much good, because then we just kind of, you know, unbolt this shifter, put the new one on there. I know like where the receiver is, we'll have to throw some silicone grease in there, but that's pretty much it. Then we just kind of swap the shifter out, put everything back together. So let me get the helmet cam back on and let's get cracking. So I drilled those holes. Your final hole should be 3/4 of an inch. So I used the punch, I drilled some pilot holes, I widened them with a 1/4 inch drill bit, widened them with a 1/2 inch drill bit, and then finished them off with the 3/4. I still got to vacuum a little bit. Vacuum most of this stuff up, just kind of throw shavings everywhere. All right, so now we got to actually take the shifter out. And there's 4 bolts that we now have access to via these 2 holes. We'll give us access to the final 2. They're 13mm bolts. I don't really understand Chrysler's sort of like random decision making with like some stuff on this car is SAE and some of it's not. Like some of it's metric. Like in this case, these are metric. I'm like, I don't really understand. But anyway, this is kind of boring, but there's just 4 13mm bolts. Well, guys, this install continues to take way longer than it should. I don't know whether this is the bottom piece that comes on the MGW or not, but the thread pitch on the shaft here only works with this adapter, I guess, that was on it. It does not work with my factory shift knob. So that's pretty irritating. I'm gonna have to call IPSCO, IPSCO, they're the other company that makes a shifter. MGW doesn't actually make the shifter for this car anymore, I don't think. So this is an MGW shifter, and I suppose that I could remove this whole bottom piece. So if IPSCO has an adapter that'll work for my factory knob, I will probably buy one of those. Now, the part that sucks is that means I gotta take all of this apart again. Well, I guess that settles it for tonight. Looks like the Viper's out of commission until I can get that sorted out. Like I said, like the whole point is I wanted a short throw shifter, but I wanted to maintain the Mamba interior. Like that's what makes this car special. So I really don't want to ruin that. This shift knob doesn't even match, even though it's black and red. Like I said, the red is a lot darker, and it's got a giant scuff on it right there. Anyway, I'm going to LS Fest tomorrow. I guess I'm gonna have to call these guys on Monday or something and figure out what to do. It's Friday night now, so I'm sure they're off for the whole weekend. So it looks like the Viper's not getting driven for a while. Oh, and just, you know, icing on the cake, because why would this not happen? When I was removing the factory shifter, one of the 4 bolts fell and I can't find it. So I know it's underneath the giant skid plate thingy that's under there protecting everything. And I have taken that thing out before. I think what my game plan is gonna be for now, I have 3 of the bolts in there, obviously Loctited. It's probably fine, but I don't want to leave it like that. So figure out what to do about the shifter. See if I can get an adapter or something that I can use to rectify that situation. Roll the car up on ramps and actually take that belly pan out so I can retrieve that screw. So we will return when I've figured out a solution. Wish me luck. I'll be right back. You guys won't have to wait in suspense because I'll have the solution right now. All right, guys, what's up? It's a couple days later. I ran into a snag, but I figured it out, and I figured I'd just wait until I kind of had it resolved to tell you guys. So first of all, when I installed the shifter mechanism, I dropped one of the 4 bolts, excuse me. And you can see under here, I have loosened the basically like metal skid plate that kind of protects like the fuel lines and a bunch of stuff underneath the car basically. And I loosened that because that's unfortunately where that screw was sitting, so I had to get the car up on jack stands so I could get under there and get the screw right. Well, I've done that, I've retrieved the screw, no problem. The shifter's installed. I actually had to pull it back out because there was another unforeseen problem. So as you can see here, this is actually going to be the finished product. I still have to put the interior back together, but we have our factory shift knob on. But I want to show you guys how I came to this and just kind of alert you if you have a Viper that you might also face this problem. The Viper from the factory, here, let me show you what I had before. Here's my factory shifter. The Viper from the factory comes with, there's usually this piece is longer and it's this big black like dampener thing to dampen vibrations. The previous owner kind of had like a shifter lowering kit made, so it doesn't actually shorten the throw, but it shortens the shifter height so it doesn't stick up as much. As you can see the welds right here. It's almost like he just, like they chopped the dampener piece off and just kind of welded the threads back on. Not really the cleanest thing ever. And that also leaves a fair bit of vibration. Now, the black thing that's normally on the stock shifter looks something like this cylinder here. Okay, now where did this come from? Well, this is actually what was on the MGW shifter in the car that I bought from a friend. So I bought this from a friend who, he was like, hey, I have a couple extra shifters. I reverted 2 cars to stock for, I don't know if they're friends or customers, whatever. Does anyone want them? He posted it on one of the pages. I was like, yeah, I'll take one. Do you have an MG, what brand are they? He said MGW. I said, perfect, yeah, I'll take one. I have an MGW in my Corvette and I love it. So he said, okay. So this is not his fault at all, right? So I asked him, can I use my stock knob? And he said, yeah, of course. The threads are the same. Okay, sure. Well, it turns out the threads were not the same. He didn't know this, actually. So again, not his fault. This piece, if you look at the shifter here, you see the arm that comes off and then there's this metal piece. This is my replacement piece, but this is what was on here before, okay? It was like this. Now, the bottom threads are the same. The factory shifter, MGW, and IPSCO, another company that makes short throw shifters for Vipers, all use the same bottom thread for the arm, so that's not a problem. The problem is these top threads here are not the same threads as the factory shifter. The reason this was done on the shifter is because presumably whoever owned the shifter or owned the car that the shifter came off of, they wanted to use this aftermarket ACR knob. Now this is like a standard knob that does not use the half 20 threads that the Viper uses. All that just to say, my factory shift knob wouldn't thread onto it. Now, MGW doesn't make this shifter anymore. They don't make Viper products anymore. They only do, as far as I'm aware, based on their website, Corvettes, Camaros, and Mustangs, which is fine. Like I said, I love my MGW shifter on my Corvette, and I'm really happy that I was able to get one before they stopped making them. With that said, that bottom piece didn't work, so I called IPSCO. The owner informed me that indeed, first of all, they do use the same threads on the actual shifter arm as MGW and as the factory, so his lowering adapter will work. He has two height lowering adapters. It's either 1 inch lower or 2 inches lower, and either one has the right top threads that my factory knob will work on. He also went ahead and measured a factory dampener for me while I was on the phone and told me that it's about 4 inches long. Well, when I measured this piece, I realized this is 2 inches long. So I realized that the reason that piece doesn't look like the factory piece, because it doesn't have the black dampener on it, is that the previous owner had some kind of like 2 inch lowering kit kind of made for it. It's not, like I said, it's kind of welded together, and actually now I should have less vibration in my shifter, which will be nice. So I actually went ahead and bought the 2 inch lowering kit. So this should mean that my shift knob sits at the exact same height as it did before. And that's exactly what I wanted. It's possible that MGW, when they were making these shifters, made 2 different adapters with 2 different thread pitches for the top, and that's why this didn't work. Anyways, with that said, I went ahead and, so this is actually still loose because I have to take it back off so I can reinstall everything. Now, that's just kind of a summary of the things that I encountered. I really hope that this information is helpful and saves some people some headaches. I couldn't even find a video online of someone doing a short throw on a Gen 3 or Gen 4 Viper. So I found some on Gen 2s, like GTS cars, but not on the Gen 3 or the Gen 4. So I'm hoping that I helped someone out and that this headache was kind of worth it. I am excited to have the shorter throw, of course, and I love MGW's shifter feel. It's super mechanical and notchy feeling, and I really like that. Anyway, I'm just gonna get everything reassembled and buttoned up. I'll do a time lapse of that because it's just everything in reverse order, so there's no point in me wearing the helmet cam and talking you through it. So let's time lapse that. I'll show you the finished product, and then we'll sign off for the day. Enjoy. Well, it's not my day, guys. So I have another problem. I was reinstalling the knob and I noticed that the bottom piece wasn't quite locked in tight enough. So anyway, I went to torque it down a little bit more, and I guess that the threads on the MGW actually are different. I honestly don't know. I really don't know what's going on. I don't know if the whole arm was different or not, but the thread stripped. I don't know, it wasn't cross-threaded. I was able to hand thread it all the way on, so I don't know what happened, but something got stripped in there. When I backed it all the way out, there's a bunch of metal shavings now. So I am just cutting my losses and tapping out on trying to get this used MGW shifter to work. Moral of the story, just buy a new one. It's not worth it to save 50 bucks or 100 bucks or whatever you get a used one for. Don't even bother. So I've ordered the IPSCO short throw shifter because the MGW doesn't make theirs anymore. The IPSCO shifter assembly comes with all the stuff that you need to install. So it actually comes with replacement bolts for the shifter assembly, which I think will be pretty helpful because the bolts that are in there are kind of old and like a little rusty and stuff like that. So it'd be good to have a fresh set. It comes with bolts for the shift boot so that I won't have to use rivets anymore. Although I use much weaker rivets now that'll be really easy to drill out. This install is 5 million times harder than it is on a Corvette for no reason other than bad design, in my opinion. Frankly, just it's poorly designed. They have the transmission tunnel. You can't directly access the shift linkage, so you have to drill holes, and it's just unnecessarily complicated compared to GM's design. So anyway, I am gonna tap out for tonight. The thing that's stripped is the actual arm coming off the shift assembly, shift linkage. So like my factory knob is fine. That's not a problem. So that's good at least, because I would be pretty bummed if I screwed up the knob, because that's actually like a piece of the Mamba interior that I'm not actually sure that I'd be able to replace. I could replace it with a black one, but this car's supposed to have the red one. So anyway, the top portion is totally fine. My factory shift knob is totally fine. It's just the bottom portion. The IPSCO shifter, you're not supposed to, they don't have a backing nut like the MGW one has, like a lock nut. They just tell you to use red Loctite, which is what I did, but didn't apply too much force or anything like that. And it just started free spinning. And I was like, oh, they stripped something. I ordered a new lowering piece just in case I damaged that, because it's only like 35 bucks. And then I ordered the IPSCO shifter, and that's it. I'm just gonna swap it all. I'm gonna have to take it all apart again and kind of redo the whole install, but I will come back and show you guys the finished product when it is all installed. But yeah, we'll have to time travel again, and I will see you guys on day 4. All right, guys, we're back. Well, you can't see it because I put the boot back on already, but this is actually the IPSCO shifter with their 2-inch lowering kit installed, and it fits great, okay? So the bottom thread, as I mentioned when we last left off, the bottom threads, I guess, were not compatible on the MGW shifter. MGW doesn't sell these short throw shifters anymore, right? So I don't know if when they were selling them, if they had like 2 options, like a factory thread pitch and then like an aftermarket thread pitch where you could use aftermarket knobs, maybe? I honestly, I really don't know. This is all conjecture. It's just me hypothesizing, right? However, what I do know now is that the IPSCO shifter, first of all, fits great. They give you all new bolts. Real quick disclaimer, I bought the MGW shifter used, so I don't know if those were factory bolts or if the MGW kit came with bolts or not. I'm not trying to like badmouth MGW. All of this was just unforeseen circumstances because I bought something used, thought it was one thing and it turned out to not be that thing, right? It's just like the stuff happens. So the IPSCO kit comes with bolts for the actual shifter. So all like those are new, and they have like washer heads on them, so they actually hold a little bit better than the factory bolts do. They also come with these nifty little plugs that fit perfectly if you drill the holes in your transmission tunnel the way that they tell you to drill them, which I did. These will fit right in, so I actually don't have to use these stick-on pieces of rubber that I was gonna use to plug up these holes. So that's kind of neat. And then they also give you these push pins for the rubber boot, which is fantastic because you don't have to deal with rivets. Then if you do need to, for whatever reason, get back in here, you can. I also did order a new shift boot. It is not here yet. Waiting for parts from Mopar. So right now I just put the old one back on here. But like I said, these are push pins that I can very easily remove and swap this out if it's not insulating heat well. You can see it's kind of torn here. I tried to duct tape some of it, and I don't know how well that's gonna work. I actually had a tear in it already before I even pulled it out. The actual part I think was like $22 from Chrysler, not a big deal. I did screw the knob on to make sure that the thread's on right. It obviously does. I needed the top half of this worked because I tried it with the MGW one. It was just the bottom half that was the issue. I felt the throw already. Not as short as the MGW, not as tight, not as mechanical as the MGW, but definitely better than factory. It returns to center nicely. It's just the MGW is just a little bit notchier, and I think the throw on the MGW was a little bit shorter, which is okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? This is still I should say this is still a massive improvement over stock. I'm splitting hairs here when I'm comparing the two aftermarkets to each other. The MGW did feel a little bit shorter to me. So I'm going to go ahead, clean everything up. I'll put the knob on, and I'll just come back and kind of confirm that we're good. And I will show you the after on the throw of the different shifter positions, so you can see kind of like, this will be a great comparison too, because what I didn't realize is that I already had a 2-inch lowering kit on the factory shifter. So you really will be able to see you'll be able to see the difference because the shifter will sit at the same height too. So let me get everything back together, and then I'll come back and we'll go over that. All right, guys, we are all done. Got everything wrapped up here. One cool thing that I noticed is the shifter actually sits straighter now. The factory angle on the shifter, they sit a little bit to the left, kind of. And this actually feels pretty good. Here's first to second. Definitely shorter. It used to kind of hang over the lip a little bit more, and then first used to be kind of more like out where my finger is a little bit. So it definitely feels tighter. That's third, fourth, fifth there. So I mean, it's still kind of like when you're in fifth and sixth, it's still angled a little bit. You can kind of see it. The shifters, it's still angled to the left a little bit. I don't think there's any way to get around that just because of the design of the Viper. But it does sit a little bit straighter, so this actually feels less awkward. It also springs back to the center really nicely compared to the factory shifter is just sloppy in this car. That'll make like doing a 2-3 shift. If I'm in second and I want to go to third, I can do that pretty confidently now. Pretty cool upgrade. Shout out to IPSCO for all the information that they gave me. Their product is excellent. Definitely recommend it. I will include a link to this shifter in the description below. Let me know what you guys think. I know there's a lot of information in this video, but this is, like I said, a harder install than I expected on the Viper, and I hope this information helps some of you guys out, and hopefully just saves you some headaches if you end up going through this process too. Like I said, I couldn't really find any videos of anyone doing a Gen 3, or Gen 4 would be the same, but I found a lot of Gen 2 GTS cars that people were doing, but like I said, couldn't find any Gen 3s and Gen 4s. So anyway, as usual, I hope this video is helpful. I hope this video is entertaining, and I'll see you guys next time.